I'm Julie, still reading from Grimm's fairy tales. Today's selection is Frederick and Catherine. It is for you and not for your children. It is a story of a couple, Frederick and Catherine, getting to know each other early on in marriage. I do feel bad for them. Let's hope none of anyone we're talking to ever had it as bad as this couple. The title of the story again, Frederick and Catherine. There once was a man called Frederick. He had a wife whose name was Catherine, and they had not long been married. One day, Frederick said, "Kate, I'm going to work in the fields. When I come back, I shall be hungry, so let me have something nice cooked and a draught of ale." "Very well," she said, "it shall be all ready." When dinner time drew nigh, Catherine took a nice steak, which was all the meat she had, and put it on the fire to fry. The steak soon began to brown and to crackle in the pan, and Catherine stood by with a fork and turned it, and she said to herself, "The steak is almost ready. I may as well go to the cellar for the ale." So she left the pan on the fire and took a large jug and went to the cellar and tapped the ale cask. The beer ran into the jug, and Catherine stood looking on. At last it popped into her head, "The dog is not shut up, and he may be running away with the steak. Oh, at last I thought of that." So she ran from the cellar, and sure enough, that rascally cur had gotten the steak in his mouth and was making off with it. Away ran Catherine, and away ran the dog across the field, but he ran faster than she, and stuck close to the steak. "It's all gone, and what can't be cured must be endured," said Catherine. So she turned around, and as she had ran a good way, she was tired, so she walked leisurely home to cool herself. Now all this time the ale had been running too, for Catherine had not turned the cock. And when the jug was full, the liquor ran onto the floor until that cask was empty. When she got to the cellar stairs, she saw what had happened. "My stars," she said, "what shall I do to keep Frederick from seeing all of this slopping about?" She thought a while, and at last remembered there was a fine sack of meal that they had bought at the last fair. She thought if she sprinkled this all over the floor, it would suck it up nicely. "Ah, what a lucky thing," she said, "that we kept all of that meal. Now we have a good use for it." So away she went for it. She managed to set it down just as that jug of beer got hit, and she upset it. Thus all of the ale that had been set and saved was swimming upon the floor also. "Ah, well," she said, "when one goes, another may as well follow." Then she strewed all of the meal about the flour, and was quite pleased with her cleverness, and said, "Oh, how very neat and clean it looks." At noon, Frederick came home. "Now, wife," cried he, "what have you for dinner?" "Oh, Frederick," she answered, "I was cooking you a steak, but while I went to draw the ale, the dog ran away with it, and while I ran after him, the ale ran out, and when I went to dry up the ale, the sack of meal that we got at the fair, well, I upset the jug, and the cellar is now quite dry, and it looks very clean." "Kate, Kate," he said, "how could you do all of this? Why did you leave the steak to fry and the ale to run and then spoil the meal?" "Why, Frederick," she said, "I did not know I was doing wrong. You should have told me before." The husband thought to himself, "If my wife manages matters thus, I myself must look sharp." Now he had a good deal of gold in the house, so he said to Catherine, "What pretty yellow buttons these are. I shall put them into a box and bury them in the garden. But take care that you never go near them or meddle with them." "No, Frederick," she said, "that I never will." As soon as he was gone, there came by some peddlers with earthenware plates and dishes, and they asked her whether she would buy. "Oh, dear me, I would very much like to buy those, but I have no money. Do you have any use for yellow buttons I might deal with?" "Yellow buttons," they said. "Well, let's have a look at them." "Well, you go into the garden and dig where I tell you. You'll find those yellow buttons. I dare not go myself." So the rogues went out, and they found those yellow buttons, and they took them away. But they left her plenty of plates and dishes. She set them all about the house to show, and when Frederick came back, he cried out, "Kate, what have you been doing?" "See," she said, "I bought all of these with your yellow buttons. I didn't touch them myself. The peddlers went out and dug them up." "Wife, wife," said Frederick, "what a pretty piece of work you have made. Those yellow buttons were all of the money. How could you have come to do such a thing?" "Why," she answered, "I didn't know there was any harm in it. You should have told me." Catherine stood musing for a while, and at last said to her husband, "Hark ye, Frederick, we will soon get the gold back. Let's run after those thieves." "Well, we will try," answered he, "but take some butter and cheese with you, that we might have something to eat on the way." "Very well," said she, and they set out, and as Frederick walked in the forest, he walked the fastest, and he left his wife some way behind. "It doesn't matter," thought she. "When we turn back around, I'll just be nearer to the home." Presently she came to the top of the hill down the side, which the road was so very near the cart wheels they chafed the trees on each side as they passed. "Oh, see now," she said, "they've bruised and wounded those poor trees. Those poor trees will never get well." So she took pity on them and took the butter and put the grease on those trees so that those wheels might not hurt them so much. While she was doing this kind office, one of the cheeses fell out of the basket and rolled down the hill. Catherine looked but couldn't see where it went, so she said to herself, "Well, I suppose the other will go the same way and find you. The other has legs the same as that." So she took the cheese and rolled it on after it, and away it went. Nobody knows where down that hill, but she supposed that they knew the way, and that those cheeses would follow, and that they would stay all day waiting for them. At last she overtook Frederick, who desired her to give him something to eat. Then she gave him the dry bread. "Where are the butter and cheese?" said he. "Oh," answered she, "I used the butter to grease those poor trees that the wheels chafed so, and one of the cheeses ran away, so I sent the other after it to find it, and I suppose they're both on the road together somewhere." "What a goose you are to do such silly things," said the husband. "How can you say so?" said she. "I am sure you never told me not." Well, they ate the dry bread together, and Frederick said, "Kate, I hope you locked the door safe when you came away." "No, answered she. "You did not tell me." "Then go home, and do it now before we go any farther," said Frederick. "And bring back something to eat." Catherine did as she was told, and thought to herself on the way, "Frederick wants something to eat, and I don't think he's very fond of butter and cheese. I'll bring him a bag of fine nuts and vinegar, and I've often seen him take some of those." When she reached home, she bolted that back door, but the front door, she took it right off the hinges, and she said, "Frederick told me to lock that door, but surely it can nowhere be so safe than as if I take it with me." She took her time, by the way, and she overtook her husband and cried out, "There, Frederick, there's that door itself. You can watch it as carefully as you please." "Alas, alas," he said, "what a clever wife I have. I sent you to make the door fast. You take the door away so that everybody can go in and out as they please. However, as you have brought the door, you shall carry it about with you for your very pains." "Very well," she answered. "I'll carry the door, but I'll not carry those nuts and that vinegar bottle also. That would be too much of a load. So if you please, I'll fasten them up on top of that door." Frederick, of course, made no objection to that plan, and they set off into the wood to look after the thieves. But they could not find them, and it grew dark, so they climbed up into a tree to spend the night there. Scarcely were they up than should come by the very rogues that they were looking for. They were in truth great rascals, and belonged to that class of people who find things before they're lost. But they were tired. They sat down and they made a fire under the very tree that Frederick and Catherine were. Frederick slipped down the other side and picked up some stones. Then he climbed up again, and he tried to hit the thieves on the head with them, but they only said, "Must be near morning, for the wind is shaking those fir apples down." Catherine, who had the door on her shoulders, she began to get very tired. She thought it was the nuts that were making her so very tired, so she said softly, "Frederick, I must let these nuts go." "No," he answered, "not now. They'll discover us." "I can't help that. They must go." "Well, then, make haste and throw 'em down, if you will." Then the rattled nuts went down through the boughs. One of the thieves called, "Bless me, it must be hailing." A little while after, Catherine thought the door was still very heavy, so she whispered to Frederick, "Frederick, I must throw this vinegar down." "Pray don't. They will discover us." "I can't help that. It must go." So she poured it down, and the thieves said, "Oh, man, what a heavy dew today." At last it popped into Catherine's head that it was that door that was so heavy all the time. So she whispered, "Frederick, I must throw this door down." But he begged and he prayed her not to do so, for he was sure that it would betray them. "Here goes, however," she said, and down went that door with such a clatter upon the thieves that they cried out, "Murder!" And not knowing that it was coming, they ran away so fast as they could. They left all those golden buttons. So when Frederick and Catherine came down, they found all their money safe and sound. And I suppose they lived happily ever after. Have a good day. And I'll see you again. God bless. Bye-bye.